Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, land transport regulators now have control over transport network services.
All of this would still arrive at the mandate of the LTFRB to regulate fare.
Grab Philippines appeals to reinstate the 2 peso per minute charge.
Boarding within the bounds and rights
There's
of
no
us,
problem.
I don't know how it would hold water.
And amid rising fuel prices, Jeepney and other public transportation groups call for a fare hike. Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board Chairman Martin Delgra joins us live. And later, would you dare to bungee jump at the world's highest glass bridge? That's for today's In Focus. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. The Transport Department gives regulators the full power to supervise transport network companies and its units. Transport Secretary Art Tugade says there's a need to regulate these services to make sure that there's a level playing field and fair competition for all parties involved. As for the LTFRB, the board says it is ready to fulfill its mandate. Grab Philippines, on the other hand, says it's ready to comply with the new regulation. Also, we get an update on Grab's appeal to lift the suspension on its 2 peso per minute charge on trips. And is the LTFRB open to proposed fare hikes? Let's go straight to the source of the story. Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board Chairman Martin Delgra. Sir, welcome again to the show. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Pinky, and salamat for inviting us again.
Are you frankly happy that the Department of Tourism is already saying, LTFRB, you have full control? That's how I understand it.
You're talking about DOTR, not the Department of Tourism.
Sorry, the Transport Department is telling you rather, you have full authority to supervise, regulate TNCs.
It's basically what we have been discussing all along, and in fact, that is what we have done during the first 6 months that we were in office in 2016. And if you would recall, in December of 2016, Christmas season, nung nagsitaasan yung mga pamasahe ng Grab and Uber at the time, no, that LTFRB has to step in and put a cap on the surge. So basically, what the new department order have done is to institutionalize what LTFRB has been trying to do in the last 1.5 years.
So it's like saying, Chairman, you have more teeth now.
That is what we want to do insofar as having to level the playing field.
Yeah.
Kasi nakapagtataka na pati yung mga ibang denominations like the bus operators, UV, taxi, nagreklamo against the TNVS at saka mga TNC kung bakit daw medyo maluwag yung LTFRB dun sa mga TNC at sa mga TNVS compared to them. So right now, we are
Pantay-pantay na silang lahat.
Opo, insofar as the regulatory function of the LTFRB over all public utility vehicles.
Right. Everyone now is under the control and supervision of the LTFRB. Sir, what's the first order of the day for the TNCs? Ano bang plano niyong unang gawin?
Insofar as the department
order coming from Secretary Art Tugade, sir.
We're looking at having to sit down with the TNC. In fact, we have said that already a week or 2 ago. We're now going to meet with them as regards the new department order. And to inform them about it, so that good that we're getting the reaction of the TNCs, among them Grab, open to the new regulatory functions of the LTFRB on that score.
So as chairman of the LTFRB, sir, what are you planning to do first? I know that you said you need to speak to the TNCs, pero ano ho ba ang pinaka-priority now that you have this new function?
Insofar as as I've said earlier, we have been pushing this for quite some time. It is just to formalize what we have, and institutionalize, if I may say, what we have been doing in the past. No? And that said, meron tayong issue on the current issue on the fare dispute involving Grab on the 2 pesos per minute charge. No? That one will have to be addressed as well. No?
But sorry, sir, why is that taking a while?
How's that again?
Why is that taking a while?
Well, because we have set hearings on that one, and then there have been some items that we have asked Grab for compliance.
So,
And there is actually another, what do you call that? There won't be any hearing anymore, but we have asked Grab some documentations insofar as that issue is concerned.
so when do you think you'll have a final decision on this reimposition, the appeal rather of Grab for the reimposition of the 2 pesos per minute travel charge?
Hopefully, if not this month, next month po.
July.
Opo.
Sir, you obviously, I'm sure, are taking into consideration the two things: the consumers paying more because of the 2
Opo.
pesos, and then the income of the drivers.
Opo.
Where are you in terms of understanding the situation? Well, of the drivers, Grab saying that because of pagtanggal po the removal of this 2 peso travel charge, nawalan po ng kita yung mga drivers.
Ideally, we need to strike a balance, and it's a very delicate balance, if I may say. But if the balance won't be there anymore, and we need to strike a predisposition onto whose side we're going to lean on, it's going to be on the interest of the riding public.
Okay.
No? But nevertheless, if wala naman din yung mga, on the supply side, wala naman yung mga drivers kasi nagreklamo, then ultimately, the interest of the riding public would also suffer. So, it's, as I've said, it's a very delicate balance that we need to strike. And that goes not only with Grab, but with all other petitions for fare hike increases that are already pending before
Oh,
our
ang dami
office.
yan, sir. We're talking
All
about
across
what?
po.
Jeeps, taxis,
Opo.
school buses.
School buses.
Okay, pero puntahan.
As well as buses, both on the city operations as well as the provincial buses.
As well. We'll talk about that a little later on, sir. So I know that you're saying that within this month or next month, you're going to look into, have a decision on 2 pesos per minute travel charge. Sir, just looking into Grab first, what about the minimum fare? Ano na ho ba? What is the status of the minimum fare sa
You
Grab
mentioned
po?
about Grab.
Yes.
The minimum fare po, per their fare structure, before that, in the context of how we look at fare and the fare structure, 4 po yan ang tinitingnan natin dito. Yung base fare, yung distance rate, which is on a per kilometer. Third would be the time rate, and then the fourth would be the surge. Okay? Insofar as the base fare is concerned, iba-iba po yan. Kasi po, pagdating dun sa basic services nila dun sa Grab car, and that goes with the other TNCs we have accredited also, yung base fare nila po is 40 pesos.
Yun po yung regular.
Yung regular. And then yung distance rate po, which is actually on a per kilometer run, is from 10 to 14 pesos.
Correct, sir.
Per kilometer. And then yung time surge, I'm sorry, yung time rate, which is actually the one that's under dispute insofar as Grab is concerned,
is at 2 pesos.
Is at 2 pesos per minute. And then the surge po is not more than 2 times the total fare.
So this is the formula that you are looking into right now. This is the
That has been
formula
the
being
formula ever
implemented
since.
right now. Yeah.
Well, except for the time rate, because at that time, the last time we looked into that of December 2016, insofar as Grab is concerned, wala pa po yung time rate na yan. Uber had that already.
Yes. Okay. So, and this kind of formula, sir, will hold true with the other TNCs that have been accredited because kailangan po in competition din po sila with Grab.
When they applied for accreditation, the other TNCs had similar fare structures as well.
So, just to give our viewers an update, sir, ilan na ho ba ang inaccredit ng LTFRB? And number 2, ilan na po ba ang operational?
Yung mga na-accredit po, 5 na po. Here na, MyCab, are actually TNCs for taxis. And they're already operational. And by the way, insofar as the taxi service is concerned, kasama na rin po yung Grab. If you may recall, the Grab actually started in the taxi business way back. Until Uber came, this is what I heard, until Uber came, and that's when they transitioned and then concentrated on the TNVS market. Now, insofar as the TNC is concerned, for TNVS, andun na yung Grab, andun na yung UHAP, andun na rin yung we have accredited Hype, GoLag, at saka Auto.
Ano po dito ang operational?
Auto is already operational,
Grab.
as well as UHAP. And then Hype is actually, I would understand that Hype is already on its stage where they're now trying to operationalize their system.
Okay. Well, any concerns, sir, from those that you've recently accredited? What were their major concerns aired to the LTFRB?
Wala naman pong major concern except to that they're very excited of getting into the service of providing public transport under that denomination.
So if I were to ask you, Chairman, ilan ho ba ang drivers na available ngayon considering pasok na po ang here na, MyCab,
Opo.
UHOP, and Auto. Auto ho to, no? Auto.
Let's try to distinguish the TNCs from the TNVS, ano? Because you mentioned about on the supply side, meaning
Yes.
ilan drivers.
Yeah.
We're looking at number of units, not the number of drivers, because probably there would be one unit, and if one unit would run on more than one driver,
Yeah.
that may be possible.
Correct,
But that
sir.
would depend on the TNC. And that would also depend ultimately on the owner of the vehicle, yung mismong TNVS operator. Now, on the supply side, we actually have decided that the LTFRB have decided to put a ceiling of 65,000 for Metro Manila. Okay? And we're still trying to populate that. Meaning, ganito po yun kasi nangyari. Nung una, Grab and Uber at the time were accrediting because that was actually the process. The TNVS would get to the TNC they would prefer, get themselves accredited, and then they are supposed to go to LTFRB to get the franchise. Apparently, kaya nga pumutok itong issue ng colorum involving TNVS po, nagpa-accredit sila sa mga TNC, hindi naman sila tumuloy sa LTFRB to get the franchise.
Right.
So we reverse that process. So what has happened now is that we are now requiring the TNVS to get a franchise, and then they will get themselves accredited to whichever TNC they would prefer.
Baliktad
And
na.
that's going on right now.
So, just to make it very simple, sir, the drivers must first go to the LTFRB, tama po, and then from the LTFRB, pipili po sila
Opo.
kung saang kumpanya sila pupunta.
Opo.
Okay,
and
unlike before.
and they can be accredited with more than one TNC.
So-
Depende sa kanila.
Okay, so ibig sabihin, any driver can join, Grab can join, UHOP
Yes.
can join, Auto.
Opo.
So, pero ang kanilang accreditation, tama ho ba, sir, ay iisa lamang. You are...
You mean the franchise?
The franchise, rather.
Opo.
Isa lang yun.
Opo.
Okay. And then, they are able to choose and migrate from one, ganun ho ba yun, company
Opo.
to another?
What is unique about this denomination from all the rest is that they cannot operate as a public utility vehicle because we treat them as public utility vehicle. That's why the need to get a franchise outside the apps. Meaning they need to use the apps to take in passengers.
Yeah. Whether-
Ganun po ang ibig sabihin doon.
Okay, kahit na po dalawa o tatlo yung app na kanilang ipinapasok. Tama, sir?
Opo.
Alright.
Opo.
We'll be
Ibig
taking-
sabihin po, they cannot get a passenger na galing sa lansangan. Yung street hail,
flag-
kagaya ng taxi, nagpa-flag na.
Hindi po pwede yun because
Opo.
hindi sila allowed to do that. All right, we'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines Silcom. We'll be answering some of your questions online, so please keep them coming. And what are the penalties for those drivers who will refuse to give students and senior citizens discounts on fares? LTFRB Chairman Martin Delgra will still be with us after the break. Also, conquer your fears. Dare to do bungee jumping at the world's highest glass bridge. That's for today's In Focus. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, LTFRB Chairman Martin Delgra, will get to your questions in a bit. Sir, I just need to get this clear. You're saying that sa supply, you have a ceiling of 64,000 in Metro.
65,000 po. For Metro Manila.
Tama po, 65,000.
1,500 for Cebu and 250 for Pampanga.
Okay.
Yung palang tatlong lugar ang tinitingnan natin dito for the TNVS market.
Ano ho ho ba ibig sabihin ng a ceiling of 65,000 sa Metro Manila na supply? Ano ho ba ibig
Ang
sabihin?
ibig sabihin po niyan is that a little bit of history po.
Sige.
Nung pumutok itong mga kolorum ng mga TNVS, kasi nagpa-accredit sila sa Grab and Uber before without getting the necessary franchise from LTFRB, the numbers were staggering when we were informed about it by Grab and Uber before. Grab was saying they have 55,000 in their database. Uber was saying about 66,000. So nagulat kami, where are those numbers coming from? And so we get the list from these two TNCs and we had them audited. And then binangga namin yan dun sa mga yung sa demand side, which data were also provided by the by both TNCs at the time, because we had a series of technical working group meetings with them.
Okay.
And so we were able to arrive at the number. Initially it was 45, we increased it to 65,000. What that means is that we're trying to create a common supply base for this denomination. No? So ibig sabihin, kung sinong TNC na papasok, dun sila kukuha ng supply na yan. No? Because we think that insofar as the data is concerned, there is more than enough units for the market to absorb.
So you're saying that more or less in Metro Manila we need about 65,000? Ganun ho ba yun?
Ganun po sa ngayon.
Na available na
hindi po available pa. As I mentioned earlier, we're still trying to populate it.
Na magiging available. This is what the market needs, is what you're saying. 65,000.
Actually, it's more than what the market needs. I like to put it this way. Ang concept, the original concept kasi ng TNVS, it's a ride-sharing model. Hindi talaga yung traditional, true blue, if I may say, na public utility vehicle. Hindi kagaya ng bus that runs on a regular route, that runs on a regular schedule. Hindi kagaya ng taxi na almost 24/7. Ito po yung TNVS. Is actually the concept originates from where a private car owner would share their ride with another, and that would be the passenger. And they would be able to share that with the use of the apps. So ibig sabihin, traditionally, either they take it during when they probably go before going to work, or take in passenger after work, during their free time. But since at that time it developed into a market whereby malakas pala. So ang nangyayari, yung iba hindi na nagtatrabaho, nag-ano na lang, nagti-TNVS full-time. O yung iba naman, sa TNVS database sila, and they allow another one to drive the vehicle.
Tama po.
Using the apps. So ganun ang nangyayari sa ngayon.
Okay. Hindi, pero ang tanong ko, sir, ano ho ba ang demand per day ng commuters? What is the demand? How many bookings are there in 24 hours?
Okay, I can relate with what we discussed late last year. The booking, they mentioned about so much numbers or so many numbers insofar as their database is concerned. Whichever, whether Grab or Uber, you could probably have more than 50,000 in their database, assuming. And then yung average demand would be somewhere between 11 to 14,000.
A day?
Units ito.
I see, units.
As against, a day, yes. As against, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the demand. As against available unit of something like 7 to 9,000. So obviously may gap. But the answer to that would be how we're going to bring in the number of units which are actually in their database but are not online most of the time.
They're not being used. I understand what you're saying.
That's precisely what we're trying to address.
I understand that, sir. But let's balikan po natin. Ilan ho ba ang average booking sa Metro Manila in a day?
In a day, umaabot ng mga, if my memory serves me right, mga 250 to 300,000 bookings a day.
Okay, so let's put it at 300,000 bookings. It doesn't, common sense, sir, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need 300,000 cars and drivers going
obviously,
around.
Because it would average something like mga 8 to 12 trips.
Ang isang isang driver,
Opo.
parang ganon. Okay, so at 300,000 bookings, sir, you're saying, am I correct in saying that you need about what? A supply of 65,000? Tama ho ba, sir?
At that time, if we're looking at the booking, we would just need something like almost 60,000.
Okay. And then
So meron tayong buffer na
5,000.
a little over 5,000
and that is
units.
that is the target, Chairman, na magkaroon nga ng 65,000 na supply, which is
Opo.
over, you're giving a buffer of about 5,000
Opo.
na mga drivers also going around. All right, sir, let's just bring this in. Some questions from our viewers from Twitter. @Kitty is a fangirl. When will they start issuing additional franchises to drivers? Yun na nga po, to meet the current demand.
Okay. I would just like to distinguish that. The franchises are actually issued to TNVS operators, yung may nagmamayari ng sasakyan. The drivers are the ones accredited by the TNCs. And obviously, allowed by the operator to drive their vehicles.
Yeah.
So, hindi po kami nagbibigay ng prangkisa sa mga drivers. So, operator po kami nagbibigay ng
So,
prangkisa.
gawin po natin very specific, sir, para po sagutin. Para hindi tayo
Opo.
there's no confusion between TNCs and TNVS, sir.
Opo.
Can you repeat that? Kayo po,
Okay. For the TNCs, we give accreditation for them to
gawin na lang po natin Grab para madali. So,
Okay.
kayo po ang nagbibigay ng accreditation sa Grab.
Okay, so that they will be able to run the service. And then sa TNVS, ito po yung Transport Network Vehicle Service.
Yung kotse at driver, parang ganun.
Yung kotse at operator po.
Operator.
Because the driver may not necessarily be the operator.
Yes, sir.
But under this scheme, possible that the driver is also the
Correct.
operator. Opo. But not most of the time. That's why I'm trying to distinguish that.
Tama yun. Tama naman, sir. I was just trying to simplify it. All right. So, ang accreditation ay kinukuha sa kumpanya. Parang
Yes,
ganun
tama
po.
po.
Ang prangkisa, ang prangkisa
kinukuha ng mga operators.
Yung operator o yung
ng sasakyan.
may-ari.
Opo.
Ayun po. All right, from Twitter, Ronald Santos, paano po ang aksyon sa mga TNVS drivers na namimili ng biyahe at nag-aantay ng rush hour para mas malaki ang kita?
Opo.
Aha. Paano
As
ba yun,
regards
sir?
that po, we already have called the attention of the TNCs. Well, obviously, sa ngayon, Grab, whose attention is actually being called, not only by the public, but even by us. And there's already been complaints regarding that as well. No? And I appreciate the action of Grab for having to address that unilaterally on their part. No? Sinasabi na nila na tinatanggal na nila yung option, yung in their mechanism by which malalaman ng driver yung destination. But at the same time, I think they have strengthened yung tinatawag nilang demerit system nila na nagpapataw ng... it's an
penalties.
internal system by which they would be able to address drivers' concerns. Ano?
Chairman, may I get your view on this because that destination feature has been talked about and debated. There are really two ways of looking at it. If you ask Grab, sasabihin nila, it's also security for their drivers.
Opo.
Pero pag sabihin mo naman sa consumers, sasabihin naman ng consumers na they're becoming unfair kasi namimili sila ng mga, ano ho ba ang palagay? Because kayo na rin po, kayo na po ang magsiset ng fare, kayo na po ang gagawa ng lahat dito. Ang tanong ko po, do you believe that the destination feature should stay or should it go?
For the commuters to know, for the drivers to know perhaps, ganun na mangyayari, di ba? For the commuters, I suppose, that's not their concern. It's actually the concern of the drivers to know. And that gives a choice on the driver to take in passengers or not.
That's right, sir.
Now, as regards that, klarong-klaro yung regulation tungkol dyan, you are not supposed to refuse any passenger when that passenger takes a ride. Lalong-lalo na dito na merong mechanism by which you will be able to monitor using the apps.
Yeah.
Diba? Unlike when it's street hail, yung taxi, kumakamay ka sa taxi na pagdadaan, tapos only to be refused by the taxi drivers, tapos aalis.
Snabero.
Ito, klarong-klaro, na meron kang
destination
meron kang
feature.
technology that monitors all the
Kaya nga.
transactions.
So what are your thoughts on this? Kailan ho ba manatili yung destination feature? Kailan ba makita ng driver kung saan pupunta yung commuter, or do you want this taken out, sir?
The answer to that really is hindi sila pwede mag-refuse. And if ever mangyari na that gives them the option to refuse, our inclination would be rather mawala na lang muna yan.
So yun ang mas naiisip niyong
Yun ang naisip nating solusyon kung talagang nangyayari na tumataas yung incidence of refusal on the part of the TNVS to take a ride.
Okay, from Facebook, Adalberto Generoso, paano naman ang pasaway na pasahero? Magka-cancel pag malapit na. Tapos irereklamo pa daw silang mga driver. Anong balak gawin ng LTFRB? Again, Chairman, you really need to strike a balance kasi both sides will really have complaints, and you really need to understand both.
We also have to understand the dynamics of the commuters, but the basic mandate of LTFRB is over the public utility vehicle and the operator, not so much on the commuters. So we just have to appeal to the commuters na kung nakabook naman din kayo, wag nyo nang ikansela. Kasi the drivers have already taken time, money, and effort to go to where you are, to pick you up. So I hope that would be, as mentioned by Brian of Grab, that I would also be looking into that. Meaning, sinasabi nga nila na like what they're doing, the pasaway na mga drivers, o kung meron din sila mga pasaway na mga commuters dun sa system nila, and then they can probably address that internally as well.
Because from my understanding, because of this department order, sir, you will set fares.
Opo.
You will also define operating conditions. You will also set fines. So bilang sige sir, go ahead.
Actually, there were two at the start of our term in the July of 2016. There were already two basic issues very fundamental to us insofar as LTFRB is concerned. Yung nakita natin na accountability issue at saka yung fare. Yung fare naman, it's an ongoing thing and that we're now trying to address it. Yung accountability issue po, we have been trying to ask Grab and Uber at the time because they were the dominant players. Sabi, who are you? What are you? Ang sinasabi nila, IT firm sila. But then again, practically they were running the operations. They set the fare, they accredit drivers, they accredit operators, they train the drivers, they take in customers' complaint. So basically, you're more than an IT. So to a certain extent, you have to make yourself accountable. So yun ang, it evolved along that discussion. So ang nangyari ngayon, we did not only categorize them as IT firms, but sinabi na namin that you are a transport provider. I would like to emphasize that, transport provider. Hindi po sila common carrier. Kasi yung common carrier, sila po yung may-ari ng sasakyan. Ito po yung mga TNVS na kumukuha ng prangkisa sa LTFRB.
Okay, we'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. All right, you're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Just to end our conversation, our interview with Chairman Martin Delgra. Sir, paano daw kung hindi inaksyonan ng kumpanya? Saan daw sila pwede pumunta? Yung mga
magreklamo po kayo sa LTFRB.
Papansinin naman sila na LTFRB, sir.
In fact, that has been, as I mentioned earlier, the issue of accountability on the part of the TNC has been an issue since the time I assumed office, and we've been addressing that. And it would be quite interesting for you to know, for example, out of 10 cases that would hear, something like 3 to 4 cases would involve TNCs, Grab and Uber.
So madami pala doon. All right, so you will probably have more on your plate, definitely because of this new department order, sir. We'll get more updates from you pag nag-meeting na ho kayo. Maraming salamat kay LTFRB Chairman Martin Delgra. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.
Thank you.